So hi everyone, welcome to my first video on Vanguard Zero Advanced. Today we're going to talk about the top tier, top of the creep meta deck MLB, and how do you play better with MLB. So currently this is my list on the left. I mean it's pretty generic. Some interesting things is I play 2Ks instead of 1K. And that's because the 10K is actually quite flexible. At the late game, you don't have a lot of options. You can push up that booster and still hit an intercept or something. It's not bad. And then I play two King of Knights instead of one King of Knights, one Alfred early or two Alfred earlys because I genuinely think that Alfred early is a pretty not very suitable card in this deck because if you ride it early, it means that you're losing out on an MLB turn, you're losing out on pressure, and if you ride late, it means that you're losing out on 2K and a crit. So that's losing on both offense and defense, and you want to get that combo running as fast as possible. And generally, Blaster Blade is a piece that you can fetch easier than Blaster Dark or the other or MLB itself. So you shouldn't really keep that card in such high regards. Currently, as of the recording of this video, I'm Legend 66, 45th on the ladder. The grind is insane. I go to sleep, I wake up, I lose like 11 ranks, 12 ranks, and so generally I hover around the 30th place and 50th place. So for the mulligans, just the bare bones, you want to search your pieces: Blaster Dark, Blaster Blade, MLB, right? 12K plus one crit, very good. And you want one grade one, so you don't get grade stuck and you can't play the game. So you prefer a Leon because that means you can ride it, and especially if you're going first, you get to drop and draw, search your pieces faster. But even an assault is okay. Just keep in your hand. There's the combo just more than overcompensates the loss of a PG in terms of tempo, honestly. And then I put Ganslot and Blaster Blade here as equivalent because Ganslot searches for Blaster Blade. But honestly, if you had to pick between Ganslot or Blaster Blade, I would keep the Ganslot because generally you put a heal on it. And if you need a grade 2 blaster on turn 2, you can always put back the Ganslot and search for the Blaster Blade to ride on turn 1. If you don't, it means that there's a less number of heals in your deck, which means the chances of you using Wingle Brave skill is higher and more consistent. And that's very important in this deck, right? It's a good deck, but how do you control what you can control is a very important aspect to more advanced play. So let's talk about some key cards, some tactics, the values of them, and some options you can play around with them. And to begin, I actually want to take some experience from the real life game, Vanguard, Cardfight Vanguard, and compare it with Vanguard Zero, right? One of the things that I noticed from just like laddering up, right, just playing more, is that the card texts are actually different, right? The original one on the right, it says the first skill is continuous. If you have Blaster Blade, Blaster Dark, you get +2, +1 crit. On the left side, it says only +2 if you have those two, and you have to do that -2 skill, the skill that gives you +10, in order to change its critical to 2. That's different because it means that you can't go Blaster Blade or Blaster Dark into Blaster Blade or Blaster Dark and then ride MLB, right? Sometimes your opponent just damage denies you. You can't search your pieces. You only have one of each. You don't have other grade 2s. So in the original game, you could just ride. You have +2, +1 crit, right? You can still catch up on the game. On the other hand, there's Dream Hater, which already isn't very viable, but it could have been an option. You could have tried that option. But right now, it's just not as great because, yeah, sure, you get that +2K earlier or more consistently, but you lose that one crit. And that's very important in this deck. So let's talk about 2 or 3 of the main cards in this deck. Ganslot. Ganslot searches a Blaster Blade for you. Blaster Blade is one of the cards that helps you search with Wingle Brave because it's a blaster. It helps you do your MLB combo, which is amazing. It helps you get an intercept. It helps you get a retire skill if you need it. But most importantly, it helps you put back a heal into your deck. And as we know, people who play Vanguard, triggers are great. Heal triggers are even better. And if you can proc them, that's a huge swing in tempo. And it could really make or break your game. So let's talk about Blaster Blade, the card that Ganslot searches. You can play it when you need an intercept, and you can also play it when you need a retire. But when do you retire, right? Because Counterblast 2 is quite a hefty cost. Counterblast 2 is quite a hefty cost. So do you retire for value? Like if you have a lot of Counterblast and your opponent has a board, not a lot of cards, you could retire for value. You could retire for intercept and push for game. This is very situational, and you have to think about it because there are other cards that Counterblast heavy. There's no on flippers in Royal Paladins at the moment and in the near future. So you really have to think about what's the next step. Do I really want to use Blaster Blade right now, or is it okay to just hit 9 with 9? Okay. The next card is Lian. Lian's a very important card. You play 4 of it, and it's because it helps you filter and search for your missing pieces, your MLB combo pieces, your PGs and intercepts when you need the defense. And what's the drop priority? Generally, it's cards that you don't need. But here's a general rule of thumb: is you ditch grade 3s and grade 1s for grade 2s, and the reason why is because to do the MLB combo, you're already losing 2 interceptors, right? You're already losing 2 grade 2s compared to every other deck in the game, which means that on defense, you're actually weaker on average than other decks. Yes, there's a 12k base, but just the sheer number of attacks you can take is lower. So that's why you should try to filter for grade 2s, assuming you have all the things you need. And this is also why we play 2Ks, because if you drop a grade 3 and you already have a K, at least the K can hit 10k. And most of your grade 3s like MLB, King of Knights, these are 10k attackers anyways. So a K is actually more valuable than a King of Knights or MLB late game, because you generally don't have the counterblast for a King of Knights anyways. And the K can act as a booster or an attacker depending on your the necessities of the board. Let's talk about some tips. Deck thinning and deck shuffling. So Wingle Brave, Stark Call Trumpeter, and King of Knights Alfred, they all search for stuff, ranging from Counterblast 1 to Counterblast 3, which is quite a hefty cost. But why do you do this, right? So let's talk about the on the face value, right? You're searching for a blaster with Wingle Brave and Stark Call Trumpeter, right? And that means that you get your pieces or you get an intercept, right? And unless you need a specific piece, I generally suggest you to get a Blaster Dark instead of Blaster Blade. Why? Because when you're done counterblasting, right? Generally, you don't have a lot of counterblast to use Blaster Blade anyways. And also, if you take Blaster Blade out of your deck, it means your GAN slots have less search targets, which means you can't actually put the GAN slot back into the deck more times than you should be able to. And so that's something you have to consider. With the King of Knights, you can counterblast 3 to search for anything. Grade 1s, grade 2s, grade 3s. Grade 1s, the Lians, if you need to cycle, Ks, if you might need that option to attack or boost with it. Grade 2s for intercepts. Grade 3s, maybe a Palamedes, if you ran out of the Bedivieres for 12k attacks, or you really need to hit cross-right numbers. But a prevailing concept is deck thinning and deck shuffling, right? What does that mean? Deck thinning means when you reduce the number of cards you don't want in your deck, the chances of hitting cards that you do want in your deck is higher, right? That's just probability. That's pretty basic. But let's talk about deck shuffling, right? Like in Vanguard 0, when you drive check a card, you put it to the bottom of the deck if it's not a trigger. And so what happens if you drive check a PG or an important card that you really want and you put it to the bottom? It's at the bottom. It won't suddenly float to the top. Plot armor is not going to save you. How do we, at least pick it back up and put it to the top if you really need it? Like if you drive check 2 PGs, that's really unfortunate, but it happens. What do? You might use Starcall Trumpeter. You get a blaster first. You deck thin, and then you shuffle, right? Which means at least the PG could be. Well, it could still be at the bottom of the deck if you're unlucky, but it could be in the middle. It could be at the top, right? So at least it's not guaranteed, and you and your opponent won't know where the PGs are, and that's really important as well. Positioning. Let's talk about positioning, offensive and defensively. This is really important because you do need to -2 to get the +2/+1 crit. So this is very situational again. But generally speaking, if you're at low damage, like 1 or 2 damage, you could just put them in the front, scoop them up, so your opponent has no other option than attacking your Vanguard. And this means that they have to first build the columns they need, and second, if you hit a trigger, it's really detrimental for your opponent's attack. If you're at high damage, of course, you want interceptors in front. you can put the Blaster Dark, Blaster Blade at the back, just scoop them up from the back row. That's also okay. Of course, it depends. Why do I say it's situational? Because sometimes you're not at low damage, you're not at high damage, you're at like 2 or 3, right? That's not a very comfortable spot. That's okay. But if you do want to do a low damage approach, maybe you're at medium damage, it's best if you have a PG or something. If you're high damage and still do this, it's good to have a few PGs or something. But yeah, generally, if you're at medium damage, put out another interceptor like a Bedivere or a Starcall Trumpeter. You can scoop up one blaster in the front and one blaster at the back, and that's the general approach that I see a lot of people doing. Another positioning issue is, how do you dodge Tejas and Boomerang Shooter and back row attackers, right? Let's ignore the Berserk Dragons of this world because they can hit your Wingle Brave anyways, right? But on attack back row attackers, right? So how do you deal with them? With pre-nerf Tejas and Boomerang Shooter from Novas, which is a pretty obscure card. Generally, you put it in the bottom corners if you're really afraid that you really need your pieces. And you just pray they don't have another grade 2. You just pray, because if it's the only grade 2 they have and it's Tejas, they have to ride it. And they can't attack your Wingle Brave, and that's you're like sigh of relief. You played well, you dodged it, well played, right? But with the nerf coming soon, you have to really think about it again, right? Because with the nerf, Tejas can only attack the back row on the rearguard circle, which means in that matchup you still want that Wingle Brave in the back row, assuming Wingle Brave doesn't get nerfed, which is a completely another story. And then Boomerang Shooter is Vanguard only anyway, so that in that matchup put it in the corner. But it's a really obscure card. I doubt you should play around it. If they do play it, then good for them. They teched well. So what's your winning image, right? So you do your combo, you have your crit. What do you do? If you think your opponent has a PG or large hand size, then you want to keep them at 3. Proc their PGs. You don't want to give them counterblast because a lot of decks do generally need counterblast, especially the meta decks. Overlord needs counterblast 3, the End needs counterblast 2, Berserk Dragon needs counterblast 2. In terms of shadows, PBD needs counterblast 2, Overlord needs counterblast 2, stuff like that. So if you can keep them at 3, limit their options, it's great. You proc their PGs, you slowly position yourself for victory. If you do think your opponent used their last PG so far, then you could attack with your last column, push them to 4. So next turn you can go Vanguard, which could win the game because it's 2 crit. And then if they still have a PG, then you can go side and seal the game, right? And then win. But if in the case that you thought they have their PG and they didn't and they're at 5, don't be too depressed, because that just means that you can win even easier next turn. Because with 2 crit, it means your opponent has to have either they draw into a PG the next turn or hit 2 heals in a row. And if they do, then sucks to be you. It happens sometimes. Just play your next game. And if they do have their PG, then you still have 2 attacks, right? So it's just the 2 crit pressure is just amazing. Let's talk about some matchups. So the MLB Mirror, the de facto number 1 of the meta so far. And generally people, different fight, they always say, oh, damage deny, right? But let's take that to the next step. Like, when do you want to damage deny and how do you want to damage deny? Who should be damage denying in that mirror, right? And like, from my experience, if you need pieces, you got to hit them to incentivize them to hit you, so then you can use your Wingle Brave, right? Like, if you don't hit them, generally most people won't hit you because they can't proc their thing. And so, then you're stuck. And if your opponent actually already had their pieces, then GGWP. If they do have their pieces and you hit them, right, and you give them their 1 counterblast, while you do give them more options, they might not still hit you because, well, they might be really stuck into the damage deny. They might have seen this video and went big brain, the next level again, like, oh, they hit me because they need pieces, so I won't hit them. But also, if they already have their pieces, then at least you have that 1 damage tempo, right? So it means you can recuperate your losses, and at least play and have more turns to get your pieces later on. If you think your opponent needs their pieces, then generally don't hit, because you don't want to give them their pieces, right? Assuming you do have your pieces yourself. But how do you know that? How do you know they need their pieces, right? And I think it's important to learn how to look for signals, right? Like, for example, the positioning of their Wingle Brave is awkward, right? If they put it to the side, the corner, it could mean that, they have only one of each Blaster Blade and Blaster Dark, and they have a grade 2, but they don't really want to ride a blaster, is what it means. So they could be missing a blaster piece. In terms of Lian, if they ride Lian, drop and draw, call Lian, drop and draw, call Lian, drop and draw, you know, I'd say they're pretty desperate, and that means they need their pieces, right? They really, really need their pieces, and so that means that avoid it. Let them drop and draw. Let them build their decks. Let them take their time. Last one is more I think is also pretty important. It's Ganslot. So again, for example, for my case, I prefer to keep Ganslot in my hand over a Blaster Blade. But if I use Ganslot in turn 1, it means that it generally means that I don't have a Blaster Blade in my hand, and more specifically, I don't have a grade 2 blaster to do my Wingle Brave search. And so, of course, these are some surface level ideas. If you do have more experience, you could think about more of these ideas and concepts. But generally, it's just idea of how to control that Wingle Brave, because that's how you turn the game around. It's whoever gets the combo first, right? Next, cross rides. It's not 11k, it's 13k, and that's 1k more than MLB, which means MLB can't hit. And so there's a high value in the boosters in this matchup. And of course, you can always play your grade 1s if you have them. But let's talk about Wingle Brave again. He's your key card. You generally put him in the middle column, the back row, and you can hit with it, right? And generally, your opponent damage denies you. You can't really use your skill anyways. So what do you do with it late game? If you do hit, what do you do? Right? Like 17 hits 13 with 2 crit. If your opponent's at 3, it means it procs PG. It doesn't hit. And it's good because at least you can hit the number, and it does its job, right? It needs to proc that first PG or second PG and furthermore. But if you do really need to search your pieces, then go for it. Because of course you should get your combo first before thinking about all that so much. If you are in the late game and you really need your defense, then yeah, sure, search for that Blaster Dark or Blaster Blade, call it Intercept out if you still have that X turn. But generally, you have to think about that trade-off between having that offensive option of not having to place down a grade 1 booster into your middle column, or that defensive option of searching for another grade 2 intercept. Otherwise, generally, you win. MLB's card quality is just so much higher. That combo is insane. You hit numbers. You have 9+3s, 7+3s. You have Palamedes 10+3s. MLB is a 12k base, great on offense with the crit and defense. And if your opponent's playing a ground blue and they sack a lot, they're playing Bermuda and they beat you, then honestly you should respect them. But also think about your game, right? Like, what did I do? Did I overextend? Did I waste my counterblast? Did I not consider some of these ideas that we talked about? Did I not place my Wingle Brave properly? Like, if your opposed Novas and they play the Boomerang Shooter for some reason, you're like, oh, maybe they thought about their game, and maybe you should think about it to the next level next time. So thank you. I hope you guys learned a thing or two, and if you do have any other tips and ideas, I do want to keep improving on this MLB deck. I think it's a really fun deck, and I think that there's finally a lot more room for skill to play around in this new meta compared to the previous metas in global. I want to thank Vanguard Zero Meta Database for the pictures. I just screenshotted off them. And they're a great resource. If you do not know some of the skills, feel free to search them out. I'm pretty sure I called out all the names, so I don't really want to read out skills. It's a waste of time. Thanks to Different Fight, because he has a lot of videos on MLB, pre-nerf and post-nerf, and he played actual tournaments with it. You can see how it fares in competitive play and on ladder, and you can see different lists with him. He does test things differently. A lot of wisdom there. And then game width, because they also have a lot of data. and they give some foresight into the future of Vanguard Zero. You know, the Japanese meta. How does MLB fare? What happens post nerf? And lastly, the viewers. Thank you again. I hope you learned something. If you have any comments or feedbacks, feel free to leave them below. Um, if you want to reach out to me, feel free to PM me. All that stuff. I really want to, help out the community. I don't really think that there's a lot of actual guides that go into this level of specifics, and I think that's a shame because a lot of the stuff is like, oh yeah, damage denied. That's very blanket statements, but how do we move it to the next level, right? And this is the goal of my content. Of course, if you think that okay, let's step back, let's talk about the basics, and then maybe build up onto it. If there's enough attention and enough demand for it, of course, I'm very willing to produce this kind of stuff. So thank you for watching. I hope everything is well and stay safe. Goodbye.